Known as the land of enchantment, but it has its flaws, New Mexico offers a blend of beauty, history, and mystery. But like every coin has two sides, living in New Mexico comes with its unique set of pros and cons. A revealing survey among New Mexicans about whether they would recommend their state as a desirable place to live yielded a telling response. 66% said no. The reasons for this sentiment is the core of my research into the pros and cons of New Mexico. Let's get straight into the top 10 cons of living in New Mexico. Let's start with the challenge of water scarcity, the flip side of living in a desert paradise. New Mexico's arid and semi-arid regions struggle with drought, affecting agriculture, wildlife, and even daily living. The state's lakes are also at all-time lows, which makes it harder for the rivers to fill up. Elephant Butte, New Mexico's biggest lake, had one of its lowest depths in 50 years in 2022, when it was only 4% full. The state gets its water from both ground and surface water, but groundwater provides about 87% of the state's public water supply. No other state in the southwestern United States gets so much of its drinking water from underground. And about 10% get their water from smaller sources, mostly private wells in their own homes that are not regulated by the EPA or the state. Water conservation is not just encouraged, it's a way of life here. You'll be alone. There are only about 2.1 million people living in New Mexico, ranks 36 in population and 46 in population density. It's the fifth largest state in terms of land area. It's not the place to live if you want to wave at your neighbor from your window. In fact, there are only 17 people living in every square mile of New Mexico. Albuquerque has about 500,000 people, which is about 26.7% of the state's population, and makes it the state's biggest city by population. Grenville is the smallest municipality by population, with only 22 people. Don't worry if these numbers are making you crazy. All of this information means that most people who live there may be pretty lonely, especially in rural areas. Well, it's hard to get around. New Mexico's vast landscapes and low population density make extensive public transportation a challenge. For those without a car, getting around can be difficult, especially in rural areas. And there is no good reason to build and run real public transportation in New Mexico because the state has few people and many rural areas. It costs a lot to start up and keep up, and the state doesn't have the money for that. Also, the cities aren't really set up to handle public transportation. In Albuquerque, every day, things are stolen from cars, or your car could also be stolen. This limitation not only affects mobility, but also contributes to higher car insurance rates. Yes, their car insurance is one of the most expensive in the country. Well, the state has the sixth worst roads in the country. As I told you before, New Mexico doesn't have a strong public transportation system. So more people have to drive to work or school than they would if the system worked better across the state. New Mexico's most risky interstates. According to CBS, along I-40, 40 people are killed every year, making it one of the most dangerous interstates in the country. And fun fact, Interstate 25 is the longest road in New Mexico. It's 462 miles long. Despite its many charms, New Mexico faces challenges in terms of job opportunities and education quality. With rankings placing it towards the bottom in the nation, parents and educators are actively seeking ways to uplift and innovate within the system. New Mexico doesn't have as many options for higher education as some of its neighbors, with only 18 schools and universities. Beyond higher education, K-12 system grapples with underfunding and low performance. Though rich in history and once home to a highly educated population due to projects like the Manhattan Project, the state now struggles to provide quality education to its young residents. The schools are bad. You should know that New Mexico schools are one of the main reasons you shouldn't move there, or you might have to spend a lot of money on private school. New Mexico doesn't have enough teachers because the pay is so low. In fact, there were 690 open teacher positions in 2022. Even worse, only 31% of kids in grades 3 to 12 passed early reading tests, 34% passed language arts, 25% passed math, and 33% passed science tests. That means that about 25 to 30% of students pass their tests on average, while 70 to 75% failed. The weather is very bad here. It must be hot when you think of the desert, right? New Mexico isn't always hot, though it gets pretty cold too. The state also has a lot of floods and strong winds. The summers are mild and buildings are less likely to be damaged by the weather, with over 300 days of sunshine a year and low humidity. During the summer, it can get over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and most days are around 90 degrees in some places, but towns higher up, like Santa Fe, have better weather. To make things even worse, New Mexico doesn't have many trees, so there aren't many places outside where you can get out of the sun and find shade. It does rain a lot in some places in the summer. It could rain several inches in just a few hours, which would damage property, cause floods, and damage infrastructure. Spring here is known for its winds, which can whip through the valleys and plains with gusto. These winds can kick up dust, exacerbate allergies, and occasionally cause property damage. NWS Albuquerque sends out high wind warnings when steady winds of 40 miles per hour or more are predicted, along with instantaneous gusts of 58 miles per hour or more. It's just as bad in the winter. Temperatures often drop below freezing. Actually, it does happen from time to time. In 1951, the town set a record when the air temperature outside reached minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit. New Mexico also has a problem with forest fires. More than 70% of New Mexicans live in places where wildfires are more likely to happen. The beauty of New Mexico's climate is matched by its harshness. With extreme heat, drought, and the looming threat of climate change, the state faces significant environmental challenges that impact its habitability and agriculture. Changing climate is likely to slow down the flow of water in the Colorado, Rio Grande, and other rivers over the next few decades. This will also put livestock's health at risk and turn some rangelands into deserts. Access to healthcare can be a challenge, especially in rural areas. While urban centers like Albuquerque and Santa Fe offer more options, residents in remote parts of the state may find it difficult to access specialized care. In rural places, New Mexico doesn't have enough healthcare workers. It's important to find out what healthcare choices are available in your area. Besides that kind of health and medical care, hospitals are always getting bigger. For example, UNM is growing their department, and Presbyterian Rust Medical Center on the west side is expanding their building because they have so much room to do so. New Mexico ended up being the 38th best state in the country for healthcare. Now, it's for hard people in New Mexico who are addicted to substances drugs. There are many people who can help you if you're having a hard time. You can find a lot of different ways to get help at nnhealth.org. It's never too late to start getting better. The state's economy is closely tied to the energy sector, with oil and gas prices impacting the overall economic health. This dependence can lead to fluctuations in job availability and state revenue, affecting public services and infrastructure development. It's not very good for business. At 4.2%, New Mexico has one of the highest jobless rates in the country. This is a lot higher than the national average of 4% and long-term average of 6.64%. There is a big difference between the median income of $51,343 and the average income of $64,994 across the country and in the states next to it. In California, $78,672, Texas, $63,826, and Arizona, $61,329. Diversifying the economy remains a critical challenge and opportunity for New Mexico. About 17.6% of people live in poverty, which is the same as Louisiana and makes it the second highest rate in the country. This means that more than 420,000 people in the state live at or below the poverty line. While not a barrier per se, the prevalence of Spanish-speaking residents reflects New Mexico's rich Hispanic heritage. Some accents change the way words sound in different areas. For example, the Mexican-Spanish accent is stronger in southeast New Mexico, especially near El Paso, Texas. In eastern side, the Texan English accent does the same thing. Most people speak English, but about 33% of people over 4 years old, about 697,403 people, speak a language other than English at home. In addition, about 10% of people, about 201,824, are considered to have limited English ability. Embracing this diversity can enrich one's experience, but may also present a cultural adjustment for newcomers. The crime rate is another thing that makes life in New Mexico less pleasant. There are more violent and property crimes than in most other states. In fact, a study shows that New Mexico has the second highest rate of serious crime in the whole country. There were 3,937 crimes for every 100,000 people. With a rate of 767 burglaries per 100,000 people, New Mexico had the highest rate of burglaries in the United States. The FBI says that it has the third most deadly crimes of any state in the country. The high crime rate in the state is caused by both drug and drink abuse. Even though they don't always go together, all 10 of the state's top reasons of death are linked to either drugs or alcohol. New Mexico is also near major lines for traffickers, and drug abuse is a big problem there. Talking about drug abuse, unfortunately, New Mexico has a lot of problems with substance abuse and mental health. The state has the highest rate of deaths from drinking in the whole country. Look at these facts. In 2022 alone, nearly 2,000 people died because they were drunk. To give you an idea, the national rate for deaths caused by drinking is about half that at 28 per 100,000 people. New Mexico also has a big problem with drug abuse. It has the second highest rate of drug overdoses in the whole country, along with an alarmingly high rate of suicide. This state has 1.5 to 2 times the national average for suicide rates. Living in New Mexico is like living a life of vivid beauty and constant struggle. While negatives exist, strong and resourceful people overcome them. It's a wrap-up for today. Comment below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, stay safe and stay warm. This is Alana signing off.